Storytelling is a much bandied word today and often runs the risk of being seen as a proxy for glibness. But I like the MRSI approach to storytelling. The key criteria meant that we were very demanding in evaluating storytelling. It was as much for the content as the delivery, and it had to lead to demonstrable business impact for the client. This combination is much needed, and it reflects in the excellent quality of submissions we saw. There was great partnership between agencies and clients, and also different functional streams within the client business. And a very innovative use of story as a device, not just for telling the story, but also eliciting very unexpected breakthrough insights, socializing very complex insights in a seamless way with the end users on the business side. So I see this as a really great section to the whole awards function.
Storytelling is such an important part of any person's life, whether you're a researcher or not. So I am so glad that MRSI decided to institute the Golden Key Awards for storytelling. It's often an underserved part of a researcher's journey, so it's particularly important that we learn to focus on it. And I think storytelling is about communication. It's about communicating your findings, your knowledge, and your experiences in a manner that is most impactful, in a manner that's engaging, and can be remembered by the others. So I think, which is why the entries that we saw this year were, so amazing, especially the one that created the most impact for me and for the other jurors, was an entry that managed to not only bring their findings to life, it also ensured that the audience was kept engaged throughout the process. So they figured out how to make it interactive. And best of all, I think what stood out was they even figured out how to take a vast body of learning and crunch it in such a way that even after their presentation had ended, the organization could easily recall and remember what the key findings were. So they found out a very simple and nice way of doing that as well. And I think that really demonstrated the power of storytelling, and the longevity that storytelling can grant to the insights that you bring to the table. In terms of some of the other entries I saw, I think what really impressed me was the quality of the thinking, but equally the quality of how they, how the researchers took the time and effort to present it in such a manner that it made sense to their immediate stakeholders, but also to the entire organization at large. So the storytelling was done in such a way that even somebody who's not very familiar with all the technicalities around the research, or all the specific business questions, found something useful to take away from that piece, which would be useful to their part of, or their journey, or their role. And I think that's the other important takeaway, that to keep in mind: who are you telling the story for? How can everyone, all your stakeholders, take away something that is meaningful to them? So I would emphasize on innovation. I would emphasize on keeping it engaging. And I would emphasize on finding a way to keep your story alive and let it live on for many more people.
Who is the story for? Who is the story for? When you are here telling story from data, is it to your internal colleagues? Is it to the client? Is it to the public at large? And that defines what your story ought to be. It can never be one story that fits everybody. And especially for all those of you who are inspired this year and want to put in a bid next year for the Golden Keys Best Storyteller Award, factor that in when you put in your entry. Who is this story for, and how is it pertinent?
I would just add importance of simplicity. I would say keep it short and simple. Yeah.
And I think a great point, Praveen, on who is the story for. I couldn't agree more. Because I think that's something that we often lose sight of, that who are we narrating this to, who is it for, and whether that's the insights presentation itself or even the pitch for the Golden Key Awards, right? In both cases, who is the story for and what is it that you want to share with them? So important. Completely agree. I think great point. I think my last thought is just around emphasizing the importance of storytelling. It can often seem like storytelling can often seem like, you're talking about making things up out of thin air, or a lot to do with using your imagination or being creative. It is about using your imagination, and it is about being creative, but it's a lot more than that. Everything that a person does, if you ever want to convince someone or communicate your point of view, or if you want to create any kind of a miracle, you have to learn how to tell a good story. And I think as a researcher, the power of your insights is only as good as the way you can communicate it. So we shouldn't lose sight of that. You could have done an amazing piece of research, but if you aren't able to tell that story well, then that's how far that story or those insights will go. So I think that's something I would really emphasize, that for the research fraternity, it's so important to learn how to tell that story well in a simple manner, like Radhika said, keeping in mind who your stakeholders are, like Praveen mentioned, and really tailoring that narrative and ensuring that your story is landing well.
Stories spread, stories sell. Stories are the ones that will help us earn more bread. Isn't it always the story, the screenplay, the twists and the turns? Hopefully we'll add a song and dance routine to the mix. Storytelling has always been with us. It's here to stay. The awards are a shot in the arm, an inspiration for all of us to stretch and squeeze, to awaken the storyteller in me, in you. Thank you, MRSI and the Golden Key team, and all those who've shared your stories with us. Storytelling is the way to go for us.